Welcome back to the Sawmill, folks. My name's Sandy, and as you can see behind me, I've got my sawmill set up. That's what we're going to be using today, my HM130max by Woodland Mills. Recently, you would have seen me take my sawmill and add a trailer and track extension onto it. That added an additional 6.5 feet of cutting space. And if you have a look here, we're now taking up pretty much the entire length of my saw shed. This saw shed is 20 feet long. If you're wondering, it goes from end to end, the sawmill that is. So 6.5 extra feet, I can now cut lumber up to 16 foot, 11 inches. That's a beautiful thing. I'm going to fire up the sawmill. We're going to run it over this for the very first time. One thing I will point out to you, I did accidentally bump my mount just as I was about to film here today, and I haven't got the time to go back and readjust it. It doesn't take a big effort, but I'm going to leave that for another time. So if you don't see me using my lasers today, that's no problem. We're going back in time to what I used to do, and that was what many of you do, using a tape measure. No big deal. These lasers here, I've got 2 of them. Come back another time or check out previous videos. They more or less just cast light on both sides of the log and just helps me with cutting. Definitely not necessary. One other thing I'm going to mention before we get going here, I'm using the power head today, but I'm also using this. Many of you have picked one of these up recently. Woodland Mills offered this brand new level indicator, and this was absolutely free. They were sending that out to people. If I remember, I'll put the link in the description for getting access to that. But anyways, I've got that. It's going to be my first time using that as well, and I think it'll be a good day. Now, before we go any further, we've come to a bit of a dilemma. As you guys know, when I moved this sawmill up into the shed, which just happened recently, I didn't have a log deck to put logs on to roll onto the sawmill. So many of you were speculating how I was going to get logs up here in order to cut. Well, this is what we're using today. You guys have probably seen this a little bit on the channel. It's relatively new to me. My Wallenstein LXT95, so the log loader trailer. I've got it positioned here, obviously attached to the tractor. And what I'm going to do is very carefully, the key word is carefully because I'm not an expert on this yet, I'm going to load logs from here up onto the sawmill, and then I'm going to take them off again and put them back in the trailer. The reason I'm doing that is this. Obviously, I don't have a log deck built yet, and I guess I could have used a grapple on the tractor and put them up one by one. But for a project I've got coming up, and you guys can speculate what the project is, I'm just going to take these logs, put them up here, and I'm going to flatten the top side, flip them 180 degrees, and flatten the bottom side. I'm not going to be making it into dimensional lumber, which I'm often doing. And so if I have most of the logs still remaining, I'm not going to be able to lift that off there by hand to put the next one up there. That's where the log loader trailer comes in. My hope, and that's a hope because I don't know if this is actually going to work too well, we'll see. I'm going to lift it off here, put it up here, cut it, lift it off, put it back in the trailer, get another one, and I'm going to do that a few times. Hopefully, I can stay steady on the controls back here, and I don't bump into anything. It's a well-built saw shed, but I'm definitely not out here to test it or destroy it. So that's what we're up against here today, folks. Glad you're here. Here we go. I just got done loading the last of the logs back onto the log loader trailer. I've got a project in mind for these, as well as many of the other logs that I've cut that's still down at a landing. I'm going to do the same thing to those logs, in which I cut the top and the bottom off them, and then I'm going to process them a little bit further, and eventually you'll see what I have in store. Now, many of you will speculate what I've got coming for a project. You're probably right. I'm just going to hold off telling you for certain until I get all the logistics figured out. But overall, went pretty well today. This log loader trailer was a big help for me. Getting it right here beside the sawmill allowed me to more or less not have to move my heavy equipment in order to get logs up onto the log deck, off again, onto the log deck, off again. Now, if I were to use the tractor, I could have done the exact same thing. It probably would have taken me just a bit longer. Now, I'm not an expert at the controls on this log loader trailer. This is still relatively new to me, so I was being especially careful. Hence, no smiles today. It was all business. I didn't want to get a log up in the air and rotate it or do the wrong thing and bash it off something and break it, so I was taking my time. But overall, I think it went pretty well. The biggest thing for me to learn, and I'm trying to train my brain and trying to figure it out, is when I grab onto a log, to try to grab onto the log in the center weight point. Now, that doesn't always mean the center of the log. Usually the lower end of the log is a bit heavier than the top end, so I have to figure out where I think the middle of the weight is and pick it up from there. Otherwise, you would have seen a few of the logs doing this and this. That can be okay when you've got an unlimited ceiling and you got nothing around you. But when I have tight quarters like this, when the log started doing this, I had to often reposition so that it was more level. Got it in here, rotated it, put it down nice and gently on the sawmill, off again, and then back on again with another log. So that worked out really, really well. Super happy to be using this. Now for the sawmill worked great again. That new extension, I couldn't even tell that I put a new extension on, and that's often a good sign because I don't want to feel like it's a separate track than the old one. I want it to feel continuous when I cut. Now, as I was cutting, I was going and checking the dimensions of the log I was cutting, just to make sure that whatever was being measured on the scale was what was being cut, and it was spot on. So that was a good thing for me. I'm probably now going to come back. I'm just going to check the gaps where the trailer connects, like right here. I'm also going to check the gaps where the track connects, just to make sure it's still where it should be. I'll throw a level on it, make sure it's nice and level and flat, and we'll be back out here sawing. But one thing is for certain, I am super happy to have that extension, because if I didn't have that extension, those logs, which are 13 feet long, they would not be coming up onto my old length sawmill. It was just too short. So great day out here. Great to have this sawmill shed keeping the rain off me. I'm going to retreat to the tractor cab there. I've got a nice sludge in there I hope is still warm, and then I'll make my way back up to the shop. Glad you guys joined me. If you can do me that big favor, if you haven't done so already, give her the old like or make sure you subscribe, and I'll see you next time.